Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea prepares to make its case against Japan's retaliatory export curbs at a meeting of the WTO. Japan, meanwhile, is getting ready to ramp up those measures by taking Korea off its so-called white list of trading partners. President Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton, comes to South Korea to discuss issues including the trade conflict with Japan and North Korea's denuclearization. And Chinese and Russian military planes enter South Korea's air defense identification zone, the Russian planes actually violating the country's airspace. The South Korean government will be summoning the ambassadors of both countries. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on our afternoon newscast. I'm Devin Whiting. 2 Chinese military planes and 3 Russian ones violated South Korea's air defense identification zone Tuesday morning. The Chinese aircraft came in from the northwestern part of the zone at 6:44 a.m. and then went out 30 minutes later near South Korea's southwestern island of Yeoudo. One of the Russian planes violated South Korea's actual airspace near Dokdo Island, a first for Russia. And in response, the South Korean Air Force fired flares and warning shots. Seoul's defense ministry said the government will be summoning the ambassadors of China and Russia later today to very strongly protest their entering the air defense ID zone without prior notification. Meanwhile, President Moon's national security chief Chung Eui-yong has officially lodged a complaint with Russia over the trespassing. Chung sent a message Tuesday to the Secretary of Russia's National Security Council, Nikolai Patrushev, saying Seoul is taking the matter very seriously. He warned that if such a flight happens again, Korea will take far stronger measures. The presidential office says the National Security Council reviewed the situation at the National Crisis Management Center. In other news, President Moon Jae-in held a luncheon at the Blue House with around a dozen members of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea, including its floor leader, Lee In-young. Among the issues expected to have been discussed are ways to deal with the economic difficulties stemming from Seoul's trade dispute with Japan. He's expected to have asked for the party's support in adding to the pending supplementary budget bill, mainly to help Korean companies compete in semiconductors and high-tech materials. However, a strong pushback from the main opposition Liberty Korea Party means it's unclear whether the bill will be approved by the end of July. President Trump says the U.S. recently had what he's calling some very positive correspondence with North Korea. Both sides, he says, want to restart the nuclear talks. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Speaking to reporters at the White House on Monday, President Trump said his administration recently had positive correspondence with the North Koreans as they continue to work toward resuming talks on denuclearization.
No, we just have a very good relationship, and probably they would like to meet, and we'll see what happens. There was a little correspondence recently, very positive correspondence with North Korea. Again, there's no nuclear testing, there's no missile testing, there's no nothing. When they're ready, we'll be meeting.
With Pyongyang and Washington deadlocked over the stalled nuclear talks, the leaders expressed a willingness to resume talks in the near future during last month's historic meeting at the DMZ. However, North Korea warned last week that if the U.S. broke a pledge not to hold a military exercise with South Korea, the talks could be at risk. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo rejected the notion that military drills will breach any agreement between the two leaders. Seoul has also stated the military exercise will go ahead as planned next month. Pompeo said Monday that he hopes Pyongyang takes a different position when they resume nuclear talks. While he didn't elaborate on what that may be, he said the task is simple, considering North Korean leader Kim Jong-un already committed to denuclearize during his first summit with President Trump in June 2018. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
New reports claim that Chinese tech giant Huawei may have secretly helped North Korea build its 3G wireless network. If true, that would do nothing to put it back in the good graces of other countries. Hong Yu reports.
A Washington Post article has claimed Chinese telecom giant Huawei has been secretly helping North Korea build and maintain its commercial wireless network. According to the newspaper on Monday, over the span of at least 8 years, Huawei teamed up with Chinese state-run Panda International Information Technology to provide networking equipment and related software. The U.S. Commerce Department has been investigating Huawei since 2016 to see if it had violated American export controls to furnish North Korea with equipment. Such revelations, if confirmed, will be the latest blow to Huawei's reputation. The U.S. put Huawei on a blacklist in May, citing national security concerns. The move prohibited U.S. companies from selling most U.S.-made parts and components to Huawei without special licenses. But President Trump allowed American firms to resume sales to Huawei at the end of June, amid Washington's efforts to restart trade negotiations with Beijing. In a statement to the Washington Post, Huawei said that it had no business presence in North Korea and that the company is fully committed to complying with all applicable laws and regulations in the countries and regions where it operates. When asked about the issue at the White House on Monday, President Trump said the U.S. will look into it. Hongyu, Arirang News.
At the World Aquatics Championships being held in Gwangju, the South Korean men's water polo team have notched their first victory. They beat New Zealand in a penalty shootout Tuesday morning after a heated match in which the lead changed 11 times. After the two sides were tied at 12 each at full time, South Korea won the penalty shootout 5-4. Team Korea lost all 4 of its previous matches, though, so they finished ranked 15th out of 16. One of the World Trade Organization's highest decision-making bodies will soon take up Japan's export curbs on South Korea. Representatives of both countries are in Geneva to make their cases. Choi Si-young has this report.
South Korea's Trade Ministry says its Deputy Minister for Multilateral and Legal Affairs, Kim Seung-ho, will attend a meeting that will take place in Geneva on Tuesday. Arriving in Geneva on Monday evening, Kim said that the Japanese government is already violating WTO regulations with its export curbs and that cutting South Korea from Tokyo's trade whitelist would further breach the global trade rules.
I will refute Tokyo's stance sternly but with grace. I will explain to the WTO member countries the unfairness and gravity of Tokyo's export curbs.
Among many possible arguments, he is likely to refer to the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT. Article 11 of the agreement prohibits WTO member countries from putting restrictions on exports, and Kim will likely argue that the Japan's export curbs violate this provision. And on Japan's move to take South Korea off its trade whitelist, the deputy minister can argue that Japan is violating the most favored nation rule aimed at giving equal treatment to all other WTO countries, a rule guaranteed under paragraph 1 of Article 1 in the trade agreement. The Council, which is made up of representatives of 164 countries, functions as the WTO's top decision-making body aside from the ministerial-level conference that's held every 2 years. Seoul aims to win other countries' support so it can heighten pressure on Tokyo. Meanwhile, South Korea's Trade Minister Yoo Myung-hee is visiting Washington this week to highlight the unfairness of Japan's export restrictions.
I will meet with U.S. trade experts and clarify the ramifications of Japan's export curbs on companies in the U.S. and the rest of the world.
It remains to be seen how the international community will react to the remarks made by Seoul and Tokyo during what promises to be a tense council meeting in Geneva. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
President Trump's top national security aide, John Bolton, has arrived in Seoul this afternoon. His trip is expected to give South Korea a clearer picture of where the U.S. stands on various security issues and whether Washington is ready to step in to help end the trade row between its closest allies in Northeast Asia. Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton arrives in Seoul on Tuesday for a 2-day visit. It is his first solo visit to the country since he took office in March last year. He will meet his South Korean counterpart Chung Eui-yong as well as Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa and Defense Minister Chung Kyung-do on Wednesday. The two sides are expected to discuss a range of issues centered on diplomatic efforts to achieve the denuclearization of North Korea and military measures to support those efforts. It's widely speculated the two sides will discuss Seoul's stance in maintaining the General Security of Military Information Agreement, a bilateral military information sharing pact between Seoul and Tokyo, as well as the possibility of South Korea's participation in a U.S.-led coalition aimed at maintaining the freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz amid escalating tensions between Washington and Tehran. During his visit to Japan on Monday, Bolton held talks with Shotaro Yatsushi, who heads the Secretariat of Japan's National Security Council of the Prime Minister, as well as Foreign Minister Taro Kono and Defense Minister Takeshi Iwaya. Bolton's visit comes after President Trump had stated last Friday he's willing to get involved on the ongoing trade spat between South Korea and Japan if need be, but added that he prefers the two countries to work out a solution on their own. President Moon Jae-in had requested President Trump's involvement during their bilateral summit in Seoul last month. This as part of Seoul's move to resolve the issue diplomatically, amid a slew of Japanese media reports at the time on the possibility of Tokyo slapping economic restrictions on South Korea as retaliation for Seoul upholding local court rulings to liquidate assets of certain Japanese companies operating in South Korea to compensate the Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Some of the Korean people forced to work for Japan's Mitsubishi Heavy Industries during World War II are pressing a Korean court to sell off the firm's South Korea-based assets to compensate them. South Korea has already frozen $680,000 US worth of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries' local patent rights and assets. The victims' lawyers said Tuesday that they had asked the court to go ahead and sell those. The Japanese firm has not followed the Supreme Court's ruling last November ordering it to give 5 people compensation of between $85,000 and $129,000 each. Japan insists the issue was resolved when Seoul and Tokyo established diplomatic ties in 1965, but the lawyers say their clients are very elderly and cannot wait any longer. South Korea is temporarily allowing companies affected by Japan's trade curbs to have their employees work longer than the maximum 52-hour work week. Describing Tokyo's measures as a social disaster, the Minister of Labor, Lee Jae-kap, said Monday that the new policy will be in place for a maximum of 3 months. He said the move will enable South Korean firms to focus on R&D to reduce their dependence on Japan for tech-related items. It's time now for an in-depth look at the global markets on this Tuesday, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Kiwoom Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this week we'll see earnings in the U.S. from major tech companies, and there's apparently anticipation that earnings will be good, and that's led stocks on Wall Street higher Monday. Korean stocks mixed, but the Kospi higher. What's the story today?
Yes. As you've said, that continued growth in the IT sectors and some of the growth sectors indicates that the NASDAQ, including some of these IT sectors, will have very strong rally going into the future. Continuation of low interest rate environment is happening, and also the better than expected economic growth rates is expected on the 26th of this month. And NASDAQ is the heart of that growth sector. So therefore, there's continuation of interest. And as you can see, NASDAQ was up the most. S&P followed. And also there has been upgrade done by Goldman Sachs for DRAM industry that boosted the DRAM-related sectors' share price performance yesterday. Accordingly, Korean market also had shown some strong increase. It was up by about 0.4% for Kospi. However, though, there is a trust issue continuing remains to be high on bio sector, resulting into cost declining by 0.91%. As for Chinese market, with the new index was listed, the Shanghai's new Star Market Tech Board. With that, a lot of money were flowing into this index, while some selling has happened on the Shanghai and Shenzhen index yesterday. But today, they're recovering quite nicely. Shanghai is up 0.45%. Shenzhen is up 0.58%. Also, Nikkei, after the elections finished, it has shown quite a bit of strong movement. It was up 0.95% today.
Now, later today at the WTO in Geneva, discussions will begin on Japan's trade restrictions on Korea. Both countries have representatives there, so the whole world will be able to get to see them make their cases. Tell us more about that meeting and what should we be watching there in Geneva?
Sure. As you said, General Board of the WTO opens today in Geneva, Switzerland, with the participation of 164 countries around the world. Japan's export control issues will be discussed on a formal agenda by the request of Korea. It is 11th agenda among the total of 14 agendas. The Korean government dispatched Kim Sung-ho, who is head of the Trade and Trade Strategy Department. He is known as a trade expert, hoping to get good results on this dispute between Korea and Japan on the heels of WTO. The ministry emphasized that Japan's measures is against the WTO agreement. Japan also is expected to dispatch Director of Economic Affairs of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who is in charge of these issues. Korea's government is preparing quite a long statement in regards to WTO complaints. However, though, it is said that WTO will not make any decisions on the export control agenda of Japan directly at this point in time. Also, another thing that we need to watch out is that Japan is whether going to take another steps to exclude Korea from the list of the white countries list, which are the favored exporting countries. The government plans to send a written statement to the Japanese government that it is unfair to exclude Korea. We will see how that plays out. With the election, the Abe's party winning, we have to watch out whether this will escalate more or it will get better.
Yeah, this is just the start of a process that could take years if it went all the way through. In China, as you mentioned, Monday saw the launch of a new stock market that's being called the Chinese NASDAQ. In English, it's called the Star Market. The 25 stocks listed there on the first day rose an average of like 140%. What does this mean for people investing in the Chinese market?
Right. As you know, China and U.S. are in quite a big dispute in regards to this IT sector. As you know, that the property rights are key issues. With some of the regulation changes, and both countries are fighting over the number one position in regards to fourth industrial revolution era. Clearly, this new Shanghai's New Star Market Tech Board is quite important. And there have been 25 companies were listed on this one. And yesterday, these stocks were up more than 100% in one day. That's quite too much of the speculation, I think. However, though, it has declined today of about 10% or so. Volatility is quite highly expected. This market is clearly very speculative. And it is said that foreign investment is allowed. The QQ holders can invest into this index, but the retail investors are not allowed yet. So therefore, we think that more interest and more structure is required for foreign investors to participate into this. But the participation is not going to be anything significant for the time being unless the intellectual property rights the concerns are settled. U.S.-China trade dispute measures are and we need to see that progress more. In any case, it is one segment that the Chinese is competing with the U.S., and it is very important sector to watch how it plays out in the future.
Got it, Mr. Yu. We'll have to leave it there for today, though. Thanks so much for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Kia Motors' first half operating profit soared 71% compared to the same period last year. Posting its second quarter figures on Tuesday, Kia also said its Q2 earnings jumped 52% on year. Net profit for the April to June period stood at $430 million. A spokesperson for Korea's second largest automaker attributed the figures to the relative weakness of the local currency and an uptick in sales of new models. South Koreans apparently spend big when they go on vacation abroad. Data show they're among the top 10 spenders compared to other nationalities. But that money may soon be flowing into vacation spots here at home, as many South Koreans decide not to go to Japan. Oh Soo-young has more.
South Korean travellers are the world's 6th biggest spenders when they travel abroad, with many opting to vacation outside Korea. But they may soon be opening their wallets at local attractions. According to MasterCard on Monday, South Koreans are now among the top 10 nationalities that spend the most when travelling overseas, a jump from 10 years ago when they ranked 12th. American and Chinese travellers top the list. Japanese travellers ranked 7th, followed by Canadians, Russians and Taiwanese. South Korea has seen its number of outbound travellers increase every year, with overseas tourist spending hitting a record $32 billion in 2018, according to the Bank of Korea. Some $5 billion is expected to have flowed into Japan, the travel destination of choice for more than 7.5 million, or 1 in 3 South Korean travellers last year. They were the second largest group of visitors to Japan by nationality after the Chinese. However, with growing bilateral trade tensions sparked by the Abe administration's export restrictions on South Korea, more and more South Koreans have been cancelling trips to Japan. Instead, they may soon be looking to vacation within Korea. President Moon Jae-in strongly encouraged Koreans on Monday to travel domestically instead of flying overseas to support local tourism. With a sore lack of domestic travellers, Korea's tourism deficit amounts to some $13 billion, with the industry amounting for a mere 2.7% of the GDP. And there lies the potential to grow the industry into a booming sector. The country is home to scenic mountains, islands, and exquisite cultural sites that have been recognized as outstanding World Heritage Sites. Most recently is Hwon's, which are traditional academic facilities boasting quaint wooden verandas surrounded by botanical gardens. Nearly 30 million Koreans, more than half the population, travelled abroad last year. 오수영, Arirang News.
Speaking of vacation, here are some destinations in Korea you might want to consider if you're thinking about a trip. Lee Min-sun introduces us to 5 villages selected by the Korea National Park Service.
In this quiet town, visitors can enjoy a relaxing walk along the stone wall. Sangso village, located in Dadoe Haesang National Marine Park in Jeollanam-do Province, is one of the destinations that Korea National Park Service recommends for a summer vacation. The village's unique rice paddies are recognized as globally important agricultural heritage by the United Nations. Korea National Park Service selected 5 명품 villages, or villages of excellence, that are worth visiting this summer. Naedo Island in Hallye Haesang National Marine Park offers beautiful scenery. Visitors can enjoy looking out over the sea while relaxing in a forest by the beach. For families with little kids, Golmekgol Village in Woraksan Mountain is a good choice. Children can enjoy swimming in the mountain stream or simply playing in the water to cool off.
My children are having so much fun here. We can play in waters as well. It's quite a rejuvenating experience.
If visitors want a more unique vacation, they can go to Jeollanam-do Province and take a ferry from Huksan-do to spend time at an island village or take a look at the traditional agriculture on Mudungsan Mountain.
Myeongpin villages are supported by the National Park Service to preserve the parks and improve residents' income. These villages are filled with things to see, eat and enjoy for a memorable summer vacation.
These villages of excellence are already popular destinations, so it's recommended that you make a reservation in advance. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors are offering summer inspection services for their vehicles free of charge. From July 24th to the 26th, the service will be offered at service centers and official service networks nationwide. The inspection covers engines, coolant and oil leakage, tire pressure, brake pads, and lighting to prevent accidents while on vacation. Free inspection coupons can be downloaded through Hyundai's My Car Story app or the Kia Vic app. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for being with us. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.